Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox, and the SNP are at it again with their sheer hypocrisy. They are moaning, they are complaining that the government's plan to send immigrants to Rwanda is inhumane. They say it's horrific, it's a terrible, terrible thing. The point is that Scotland does not have its fair share of immigrants. Immigration in Scotland is actually very low. If Scotland was so anti-sending immigrants to Rwanda, perhaps they could open up and say, no, we'll take them. Scotland will take a lot more immigrants. But that doesn't seem to be what's happening. Why not? Maybe even immigrants don't want to live in Hamza Yousaf's Scotland. And yet he's doing all the best he can to make it very welcoming for them. It's an odd thing. Is Scotland now so bad that immigrants coming from war-torn areas or from impoverished regions would rather not go to Scotland? Isn't good, is it? But it is the sheer hypocrisy of it all. So we'll take a look at this. It goes to show the SNP, once again, say one thing, do something else, and then try and make it out as though they are virtuous and that everyone else is terrible. Here goes. So the SNP are bleating about Scotland's values, but it doesn't translate into a welcome for asylum seekers, although obviously very few of them are actually asylum seekers. They are mainly economic immigrants, as we know. The Nats are furious about what they call the horrific Rwanda bill, although that does seem a bit racist, calling that they're saying that Rwanda isn't a good place. Seems very subjective, doesn't it? And yet, Scotland houses a lower per capita number of asylum seekers than any other part of the United Kingdom. That's because the migrants and the immigrants themselves don't actually want to go to Scotland for some reason. You couldn't make it up. If you want an example of SNP hypocrisy in action, you could do worse than examine the following statement from Alison Thewlis as she railed against Rishi Sunak's Rwanda bill on Monday evening. She described it as dog whistle politics from the Tories in an attempt to win right-wing votes. Looking down from her lofty pedestal, the Glasgow Central MP declared, SNP MPs will continue to fight against this horrific bill and stand up for fairness, compassion, dignity and helping those who need it. Those are Scotland's values, and we will make sure that they are represented at Westminster for as long as we remain. Not long then. Won't be there long, will you, Alison? Fair enough, given that Scotland's values mean they help more asylum seekers than any other part of the UK. Except, of course, Scotland doesn't. In fact, the Scottish Government's bungled Ukrainian sponsor scheme, which has been discontinued, they won't pay anymore. They're saying, no, enough's enough, because, of course, they're the wrong kind of asylum seeker. They're European, Christian, white. They accept fewer asylum seekers than any other part of the country. We jock Chamson's bairns, as the famous saying goes, but not in the SNP SNP Scotland. Maybe, as the MP Kirsty Blackman has claimed, that would all change after independence, thanks to a policy of unlimited immigration. Total, no control. Just open the borders and let any in who wish to come, regardless of whatever crimes they may have committed, whatever they bring with them, whatever politics of hate and division there may be, and with no intention, of course, of integrating. But that certainly, of course, isn't the case at the moment, so perhaps it is just a case of dog whistle politics in an attempt to win left-wing votes that is being pushed. Very likely. The Ukrainian scheme makes a big difference to the stats, with the latest Home Office figures showing that 20,751 people are in the UK are sponsored by the Scottish Government. Not all of them are actually living in Scotland, however, with their location recorded as unknown, which means it is just as likely they're living in London, Manchester, Birmingham or Bristol. They probably are when you think about it. Imagine that. You're leaving a war zone, you get to Scotland and you think, oh God, no. There are a further 5,665 Ukrainian refugees who actually are in Scotland. So about 16,000 of them registered to Scotland and decided, no, not for me, thank you very much. Would rather go back and live in Ukraine under, the Russians bombing us rather than live in Hamza Yousaf, Scotland. That's what he's done to Scotland, I'm afraid. Discounting the SNP's super sponsor scheme, refugees and asylum seekers represent 0.226 of the Scottish population, just behind Northern Ireland with 0.234, Wales with 0.224. England, on the other hand, Tory England no less, refugees and asylum seekers make up 0.38 of the total population, getting on towards 2/3 more than in Scotland. Goes to show that that warm welcome isn't so warm from the SNP government because they cost, and the SNP do not want to pay. They haven't got the cash. They're completely out of dough. They have got nothing left. Ukrainian and Afghan refugees are spread fairly evenly throughout Scotland, but asylum seekers are disproportionately crowded into one city, Glasgow. The Deer Green place is home to a supported asylum population. What they mean by supported asylum population is immigrants who are at great cost to the taxpayer. There's nearly 4,000 of them, which is almost 3/4 of the Scottish total. Asylum seekers make 0.62% of the Glasgow population, 3 times more than the next city on the list, Aberdeen, with just 436 people being paid for by the Scottish taxpayer. So perhaps Alison Hewlett was actually criticising her SNP colleagues for failing to stand up for fairness, compassion, dignity and helping those who need it. People like Joanna Cherry, who spoke during the Commons debate on Monday evening about human rights in Rwanda. All these areas with none at all. Stirling, Argyll and Bute, Highland, Scottish Borders, Orkneys, Clackmannanshire, Midlothian, South Ayrshire, East Lothian, Nehelan and see, I nearly said Anere, because it's obviously the island, not the place, the constituency, not the place. My apologies. Eastern Berkshire, East Renfrewshire and the Shetland Islands, all of them have none. And I can't say, I find that odd, although the Shetlands has a massive murder rate. All the time you're watching it, everyone's getting murdered in Shetland. There's been no matter. The city of it's almost as dangerous as Oxford, isn't it? Anyway, the city of Edinburgh is home to just 71 asylum seekers, which is the equivalent of 0.01% of the Scottish capital's population of 526,000. Many of whom are incredibly wealthy and privileged. In total, 13 of Scotland's 32 local authorities don't have a single asylum resident there, as we've seen on that list. It's strange, isn't it, how they go on about this and they moan about this and they complain about this, and yet they do very little to help. Hypocrisy laid bare once again. Oh, the SNP. What a bunch you are. Coming up. Rather than standing there and slagging off everyone else, perhaps the SNP could do something about it. Perhaps they could, stop just finger pointing and whataboutery and do something good, do something efficient, do something for other people rather than just trying to screw everyone for their own gain. Of course, most people coming to Britain illegally aren't actually asylum seekers. I have no problem with someone genuinely feared for their life, but it does all seem to be single young men of working and fighting age. Anyway, I shall stop there. Thank you very much for joining, and we will finish the video now. More to come, plenty more. We've just seen a new one coming in. You'll get that about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, I think. There's one coming up with Rishi Sunak having a moan about the new hate bill. So interesting to see what he says. Interesting to see if he'll do anything about it. They do have the power, of course, to pull it. Let's see if they will. Till then, goodbye.